Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked, blissed? Dr. Shealy, are you blissed?
Yes.
Dr. Shealy, if it's okay with you, I'd like to take a short detour, but there is a medical question I have at the end of this short detour. I'd like to talk about something that happened almost 70 years ago. And that would be on December 7th. And a lot of people talked about the attack on Pearl Harbor, the day that got us into World War II, the day that got, 2,335 American servicemen killed, 1,143 wounded. Now, that number changes depending on what source you use. But on December 7th, 1941, at just about 8 a.m., maybe 7:59 in the morning, the United States Naval Harbor at Pearl Harbor was attacked by the Japanese. Those people that I just mentioned, the 2,335 American servicemen that were killed, they were murdered. Now, some people say, well, war really, when people get killed in war, that's not murder. This was murder. Why do I say it was murder? Well, because we were not in a war. There was no war declared with Japan. They just attacked us and murdered 2,335 Americans and wounded 1,143 more. There was no state of war until they attacked us. Well, that was 70 years ago, almost 70 years ago. Some ships were sunk. The USS Arizona, the Nevada, the Oklahoma, the Tennessee. Other ships were damaged. Our military lost 188 airplanes. They were destroyed. 159 more were damaged. The USS Arizona is still there where it was sunk. And it had 500,000 gallons of fuel oil on board and still leaking. To this day, almost 70 years later, it leaks up almost 2 gallons of fuel oil a day and has since it was attacked on December 7th, 1941, almost 70 years ago. So it's still leaking. My father and his brothers enlisted in the U.S. Army. Why? Because we were attacked. They came to the aid defense of our country. They weren't the only ones. My dad was a first sergeant. He got 90 days of training. War was not, in his thoughts. He wasn't thinking that, hey, why don't I just go to war? That'd be fun. It wasn't like that at all. We were attacked, and he responded, and so did his brothers. He was shipped off to the Pacific on a Pacific fleet. A troop ship. A bunch of troop ships. There was a flotilla of troop ships in the Pacific, and they were dive bombed by the kamikaze pilots of the Japanese military. So think about this. So there are U.S. servicemen in the Army on Navy ships, and they're being attacked from the air by dive bombers. They were strafed with machine guns, and what the Japanese would do is they built cheap airplanes. That was a one-flight airplane. The idea with these plywood airplanes was to fly one bomb, a belt of machine gun cartridges. They would shoot until they were out of machine gun cartridges. They would launch their bomb, and then with the plane out of weapons, they would use the plane as a weapon and dive it into a ship. That's what the Japanese did. And my dad was on one of these ships, and he watched ships all around him on fire in the Pacific. No place to go. No place to go. So my dad he survived that, ended up in the Philippines. And if you want to see the horrors of what happened in the Philippines, I suggest you watch a video called The Great Raid. The Great Raid. What happened was the Japanese, after they attacked us about 8 hours later, they attacked the Philippines. And we had U.S. civilians and military on the Philippine Islands. And what they did was they forced the Filipinos and the Americans to one end of the island where they captured them. The Americans and Philippines were outnumbered, outgunned, and ultimately had to surrender. They surrendered to the Japanese where they were bayoneted alive. They were put into what would be considered maybe a little air raid shelter. That would be a dugout, scooped out area in the ground where that was covered with like a little wooden bridge. And so it was a low depression, and they put a bunch of our guys in there. Then they'd roll a barrel of gasoline on each end of the dugout. They would remove the bung, and this opening would allow the gasoline to pour into these air raid dugouts. And then the Japanese would light them on fire. They would burn our men alive. They would bayonet them. And anyone who dared coming out of this burning inferno would be machine gunned. To this day, no one in our family owns a Japanese vehicle. Now, why is that? Do we hold a grudge? Yeah. Yeah, we do. Why? Because they tried to kill my father. And men like him. Now, that's just the Pacific theater. There was the European theater as well. So we do not own any Japanese cars. And we don't plan on it. Now, how many generations does it take? Well, I think it takes about 3 or 4 before the families forget the atrocities of war. I don't think our sons are going to buy any Japanese vehicles. They haven't yet, and I think it's the same reason why that they wouldn't buy them that I wouldn't. And my dad would say, they were trying to kill me. He didn't know them. He didn't know the Japanese, but they wanted him dead. They wanted to kill my father. There's a couple words I'm going to use that might get me thrown off the air. I'm going to use them right now. Alex, our engineer, you don't have to worry about them, I don't think. But if you watched a television series called McHale's Navy, it was on just over-the-air television back in 1965. It was all fiction. But they referred to the Japs as Japs. We refer to them as Japanese. They refer to them as Japs. They also refer to them as Nips. Now, why did they do that? Well, Jap is the first 3 letters of the word Japan. I don't think it's a racial slur at all. Just as I don't think when people say, you guys are from the U.S., I don't think that's a racial slur either. Because U.S. is the first 2 letters of the abbreviation USA. So Jap is the first 3 letters of the word Japan, or the word Japanese. They also use the word called NIP, N-I-P, and I don't think that's a racial slur either, and I'll tell you why. Because Nippon, N-I-P-P-O-N, is the Japanese word for Japan. It means rising sun. The Japanese people are known as those of the rising sun. So the first three letters of Nippon, which is their word, is NIP. So in McHale's Navy, you would hear them use the word Japs and Nips. I don't think it's all that bad. And I'm not telling you this as to be offensive or to be politically incorrect. I'm just telling you that that's the way it was in history. I'm just giving you a clarification of the way it was. You don't hear the words Japs and Nips anymore because I think the Japanese seem to think it's offensive. Well, some of them might. But I'm just telling you, that's the way it was. And that's how they were referred to. And I think it's all backwards. I don't think there is any cause for racial slurs to be claimed against those words. Because, in fact, those are just words. What they did was murder us. Murder us. Over 2,000 of us. They murdered us. And now we hear that these two words are offensive? Who do they think they are? That's the outrage. So the medical question I have for you, Dr. Shealy, is the horrors of war. My dad carried the horrors of war. He remembered the smell of rotting, burning flesh for his entire life. He remembered the kamikazes dive bombing these ships. He remembered watching the burning men jumping off their ships. They were being burned alive while they were being strafed and bombed, and their ships were on fire in the Pacific with no place to go, jumping off the ship to put out the fires of their flesh. He remembered that. Dr. Shealy, have you encountered the stresses, these memories of those who have survived physically, but maybe not mentally, war and the atrocities of war?
Oh, yes. Not in a huge quantity, of course, but definitely. And by the way, my master is 77 years.
I'm sorry, what was that? 77? What was 77?
77 years ago.
Uh-huh. Dr. Shealy, when we come back, can you tell us what can we do for those who have been scorched, burned mentally, who carry around in their minds these horrors that many of us can't even imagine? What can we do to help them? We'll be right back. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us, medical doctor. And the question I asked is, what can we do about these victims of war that are physically and mentally injured as a result of war? I mean, even the concussions, the sounds of war are just unbearable. And I think the average person would have a real tough time just dealing with just the sound of the explosions. Oh, by the way, Alex, do we have Guineith Isaacs with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Hello, Vincent. How are you today?
Well, Dr. Shealy, maybe you can... Hi, Guineith. Maybe we can answer that question a little later. Dr. Shealy, Guineith has a burning question that she would like to ask you about, I believe, past life regression. Guineith, please share what your thoughts are with Dr. Norman Shealy.
Okay. Yes, Dr. Shealy, I've been wanting to speak with you for a little while, okay, about past life regression, because the situation that I'm facing, Archie, that was my husband, and I, when he was alive, we did some past life regressions, and we came up with a lot of data about two past lives especially that have been verified since then by my historical research, okay? And I have been able to come up with names and places of people, and also confirmation, a very, very specific confirmation of actual events that we saw in the regression. When we were doing the regression, we didn't get any names, and we generally didn't get places either. But the research that I've done it's been all since his death. And some of it as recently as the last couple of weeks. But I've managed to pretty well verify everything that we saw. And what I'm reading is that one of these past lives, it was actually that I was a highway woman, and my Archie, he was a highwayman, and that we were lovers, and that we had a particular set of circumstances that I saw that's been able to be verified by, like I said, by the history that I've researched. And but what I'm getting is that this woman, to this day, is still haunting. There's a part of my soul that is still haunting that road, okay, to the point of where there's 3 or 4 really, really major serious accidents on this section of road, which to look at is not a significant looking section of road at all. Parts of it are like 1 and 2 lane country lane type highways, and yet it's an ancient highway. This is a set of events that goes back 400 years. And for the last 400 years, ever since this woman's death, that was me in the past life, there's been 3 and 4 really, really major crashes on this road every single year, right up until the present day. And some of the road is now a major freeway, but much of it is still just the 1 and 2 lane little country road. Have you ever come across a circumstance like that?
Well, yes, all kinds of things. Let's face it, a hex, if you will, or curse can be put not only on a person, but on a physical location where something dreadful happened. So to me, what that stretch of road needs is an exorcism.
Yeah, I was thinking that, and I was thinking that I'm probably about the only one who can really do it. I actually trained to do exorcisms, by the way, just so that everybody knows. And I've done them from time to time, especially locations where there's been hauntings. So I'm thinking that at some time I will have to go to England and basically reintegrate that part of my soul.
We've got 2 instructors with us at the moment. Dr. Norman Shealy is with us in Missouri, and we've got Guineith Isaacs with us, another instructor, live from Australia. Guineith, you were talking about past life regression. Please continue with your question, and let's see what Dr. Shealy thinks.
Okay, that's basically it. I think that at some stage I'm going to have to go to the UK, which is a long way from here. In Australia, it's like the other side of the world. It's not like just going down the road. But I'm just, I'm kind of wondering if I should tell you who this lady was. I'm locally in the area. She's really, really famous, and every time there's a major crash on this road, they blame it on her. In the UK, they just flat out do. And I think that if anyone lives in the Greater London area between maybe Luton and the city, they would probably be able to guess who I am. But yeah, it's been quite interesting because there's been another past life, and I think that I was speaking with Vincent about this. This is a later past life than the highwaywoman lady. And this one, I was actually a pirate in the Caribbean. And I was I know that everybody's sort of going a bit crazy at the moment about, all of this LGBT whatever. But, it actually makes me kind of angry because back in this life I was a cross-dressing female pirate in Mandrag in the Caribbean. And I saw this probably about 18 years ago when we were doing past life regressions with my husband. And I was a pirate surgeon, and I was the lover of one of the most famous of the Caribbean pirates. And, the history books record me as being a male, but in my past life regressions I've seen that definitely was not the case. And it's been really interesting because since then, one thing that has come up in this queer research is that actually researching this particular Caribbean pirate and actually pointing the finger at that very pirate surgeon and saying that was his lover. We can now see clearly that was so. How's that? And if you were to do an internet search on the names of these two Caribbean pirates, they come up together and they link together with numerous blog posts from the queer community, linking them together as being gay pirates. And I can just say that they weren't gay pirates because I was female. I was definitely female in that life. But I was in Mandrag, okay? And I wasn't the only one because there were two contemporaries of mine, and they were Anne Bonny and Mary Read. And they were also mandragging it all over the Caribbean. And I did a little bit of regression work then regarding myself because I knew them. I was on a different ship. I was not on the same ship as Anne Bonny and Mary Read and Calico Jack Rackham. I was not on the same ship with them. But I knew them, I knew of them, and what the information that I got on that particular, on how I knew them was that I went drinking once with Anne Bonny, and we got drunk together. And it appeared to be, I think, in the Bahamas. And it's really interesting because when I was a little girl, I always wanted to move to the Bahamas. I thought the Bahamas was great, and I think I mentioned this to you, Vincent. There was a guy who had an exercise show. What was his name? And it was based in the Bahamas. Jack Burlane. Are
you talking about Jack LaLanne? Mm-hmm.
Jack Burlane. Okay.
No,
is that
Jack
with a B or with a Z? LaVane.
Jack?
Yep.
No, LaLanne, I believe.
LaLanne. Okay. And I would watch his show and I'd do his exercises and I would see the Bahamas and I would want to go there as a little girl. And I remember going to my mum as a little girl and saying, when I'm a big person, I'm going to move to the Bahamas. I didn't know how to say it properly. I was so little, I must have been 3 or 4. And Mum said, oh, well, what do you want to do that for? And I said, I love the Bahamas. I used to call them Bahamas.
Guineith, I've got a question for you. So Are you saying that it's Jack LaLanne, L-A-L-A-N-N-E? Jack LaLanne is the man you're talking about. The question I have for you is, you have had you believe you know of 2 people you were in past lives.
Yes.
Are there more? Or just 2?
Yes, there are. But there's 2 I'm focusing on at the moment. There's a third one, that's my great aunt. Okay. She was an art teacher. She went to Paris. She lived in London for a time. She actually trained with a couple of really famous artists here in Australia.
Are you saying you were your great aunt?
I was my great aunt. Yeah.
Okay, so now I've got a question for Dr. Shealy. I've got a question for Dr. Shealy. Dr. Shealy, is there a limit to the number of past lives a person has? Because as I remember it, you know of at least 2 that you've had. Is that right?
I know 30 I've had.
Okay.
So,
30.
I think we've each had probably 100 or more, several hundred. Obviously, the most important thing is if there's any emotional hang-up. I mean, now, if it's a good past life, well, just bless it. If there's emotional hang-up, negativity associated with, then it's time to release that. And my number one thing to do in a past life experience is to release and forgive into the hands of God, because we don't want to carry it further with us into the future. Now, interestingly, there was a book by Dr. Kenneth McCall some years ago called Healing the Family Tree. And he reports doing exorcisms frequently on people who are inhabited, if you will, by negative family members who died. And they do an exorcism. So maybe you could get in touch with Dr. McCall and have the Anglican priest do the exorcism for you.
It's like this. I believe from what I'm seeing that it has to be done right. Okay.
Of course. Well, exorcism could just screw things up if it's not done right.
I know. It will create more problems for me if somebody else does it and makes a mistake. Okay, and it will create more problems for other people, because this particular woman, she, in this life, I feel that I have more work to do, and there's a particular, both the Caribbean pirate past life and the highwaywoman past life, they were both super violent. I'm not a super violent person anymore, okay? And I have to point that out. But there's a lot of the positive things that have to do with those, with what I experienced in those past lives that are actually really useful. Like, for instance, just plain being able to stand up for myself, okay? In the Caribbean pirate past life, I was actually nominated by my captain to be the dispenser of justice for the ship. And it was my job, when we captured a ship, to meet with the officers, the senior leadership of the ship, and decide what was to happen to them. And that is a particular skill set that I believe is probably going to be called on again. And if they had done the right thing by their crew, if they had fed them well, treated them right, had fair work and paying conditions, then often we just hand the ship. They had done the wrong thing. If they had starved their crew, if they had, if they had not given them fair work and conditions and all of that sort of thing, and adequate time off and so on and so forth, and port access when they were in port, then we would hang them by the yardarm. That's what we would do. And so much of this particular Caribbean pirate's job was just going around dispensing some justice and he allocated that particular responsibility to me in that life, and that's actually a skill set that's useful. And this particular Caribbean pirate has actually shown up in my life. He sent a selfie to my cell phone, and I think I sent a copy of that to Vincent. So how's that?
Yes. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Guineith Isaacs is with us live in Australia. And the three of us have had past life regressions. I know of one of my past lives. I was a nobody. I was just a farmer trying to defend our village that was being attacked by our enemy, and I'm not really even sure who the enemy was. But, I wasn't anybody special, just a farmer trying to defend our village. Guineith was notorious, and Dr. Shealy has had been some famous people in history during his past lives. Dr. Shealy, what are your comments about what Guineith has said? I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
There's good karma and there's bad karma. And in my opinion, you reflect whatever you can of the good karma, but more important, when you know that you were, didn't do something right, it is your opportunity to clean up your old karma. So.
Oh, yeah. Do you know what the major problem is that I have had in my life? Okay. Especially the last few years, is dealing with the highwaymen operating locally here with the local police. They pull me over every time I drive out, and they want to extort money out of me. My husband had a yacht. Guess what? His yacht was stolen by pirates. I know exactly what I had a yacht, and the Queensland police sank my yacht in the middle of a shipping lane. I know exactly what you're talking about. The water police in Queensland, which is basically, as far as I'm concerned, they're a bunch of pirates all on their own. I was living on a subtropical island, and I had a yacht, and my yacht was sunk by the Queensland police in the shipping lane. And I had to, there was somebody on the island who did yacht salvage, and he salvaged it, and basically I sold the yacht to him at a discount. So that was what happened there. But I know exactly what you're talking about. And the good karma is in the past life where I was the highwaywoman. I was an adrenaline junkie. Basically, I knocked coaches for fun in that life, okay? But as well as that, it was an income source, and it's how I kept myself in my own house. And because I was married at the age of 13, and my husband was 16 at the time. This is 400 years ago, by the way. And he did something to me when I was 13, and I was never able to bear children. That's not in the history books. That's what I've seen. But the truth of it is this woman never had children. And what happened was he sold my estate from under me, piece by piece by piece by piece. And by the time I was 16, there was nothing left. I was renting my own home, which was a very, very famous manor house in that area, very strongly associated with this particular lady. And her lady haunts the manor house, by the way. And I have seen myself standing on the stairs. There's a particular stairway in this house, and I've seen myself in my full highwayman kit. We're talking about stereotypical highwayman gear, tricorn, mask, black cape, black trousers, black riding boots, white shirt, ruffle at waist at the chin, so not as a lady highwayman, as a female highwayman in Mandrag, which is exactly what I saw all those years ago. But it's what I've seen, what I've read in the history books since about this particular lady. And I also had a dream where I saw the tunnel system under her house.
As the walrus said, the time has come to clean it up.
Guineith, thank you for calling in today. All set? Cocked, locked, hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Norman Shealy, Senior USA Prepares Instructor, is with us. And Dr. Shealy, we're talking with Guineith, who's no longer connected on this broadcast from Australia. We were talking about past life regression. And my question is there a balance point, an equilibrium point between good and evil? And what I'm saying is, if you were to weigh through some measurement all of our past lives, the ones that we know about, the ones that we don't know about, is there an equilibrium where we would be as good as we are evil and it would equal or balance out? Or does a person have a proclivity toward the good or evil side, and it's not in equilibrium?
Well, that's a big question, which I can't answer, obviously, because there are too many variables. I know of 3 of my not good lives out of 30. That's 10% of the ones that I know about, in which I'm not proud of. And in general, dealing with people, hundreds of them where I've done, the things that seem to come up are not always because someone was evil or bad in a previous life. It's more unfinished business. In other words, going out of a life with anger, guilt, anxiety, or depression and not finishing that, and it comes back to haunt them more in a subsequent life. Not because they were bad, because they just haven't come to grips with sort of a lingering soul, anger, guilt, anxiety, or depression. And that can be dealt with.
Okay, so there is literally a timeline. So it's not all these things happening at once. It's in the past, and we are now in the present. So it's not like you can put all of these events on a scale then, because it's over time. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, and I don't fully understand that the lack, if you will, of what I would call equilibrium. But my impression is that for most of us, at least, the majority of our lives have been simple, not so complex, and don't leave us with unfinished business.
Mm-hmm. During the first part of hour number 1, I talked about war and the horrors of war and the scars and the damage and the lingering lifelong effects that many who have been to war have, these scars and these lingering effects. It used to be called shell-shocked. When guys would go into battle during the wars, I'm talking about World War I, World War II, and even before that, and after that, they would start drinking, and their lives would just turn to mush. They were destroyed because of being shell-shocked, just the concussions. I had an uncle who was a combat photographer during the Korean, some people call it a war, some people call it a conflict. He was a combat photographer, and he was really good with a camera, and he was standing between 2 guns, 2 tanks, and they discharged, and his ears were ringing until last year when he died from the concussion of those guns. So even the sounds of war are horrific. Dr. Shealy, what can we do for those who are still with us who have suffered?
Well, we now call it post-traumatic stress disorder. I believe that began to be talked about primarily during and after the Vietnam War, maybe the Korean, I don't remember. But basically, again, there's not only past life regression, but regression to painful events in this life. And therapy can take people back to that and have them, relive it and finish the business. I like to say finish, deal with, be unequivocally at peace with anger, guilt, anxiety, depression over something that happened even in this life.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so if someone wanted to pursue that path, Dr. Shealy, what would they do? Would you want them to call you? What do they do?
Well, that kind of activity I can't do on the phone. I don't like to get into extremely, emotional problems on the phone. I want to be with the person so I can help them deal with it. But certainly it's the kind of thing I've dealt with many hundreds of times over the last 40 years. And so it does require, I think, a therapist who is accustomed to dealing with major trauma.
Mm-hmm. In my past life regression that you did, Dr. Shealy, I believe that what I was seeing was the horrors of war, and it appeared to be during the revolutionary time of the United States. It appeared to be about then. And there were a couple things. I mean, there was the killing, the murder, the rape, all the things that happened by our enemy, which appeared to be the redcoats at that time, on our villagers. And they were coming toward us. They were burning down village after village on the way toward our village. Not that our village was where I happen to live. It's not like we were the last village. We were just one village in the line of villages that were being destroyed and burned, and the farm animals killed, and I mean just total destruction. It's almost like Sherman was coming through, and what I saw was these horrors, and I'm wondering if maybe that's why I am the way I am today, because I saw this in a past life, and I'll be darned if I'm going to let it happen again.
It set you up to be prepared.
Yeah. Well, that's what I mean, and I also mean that I saw the same darn thing in this past life, and you were there to witness it. That I just couldn't, for the life of me, get my fellow villagers to rally around and defend our village. I couldn't get those pansies, those weaklings, those spineless neighbors of mine to stand up against the redcoats.
Among many, many traits, you and I do not like wimps.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we can call them wimps. That's exactly right. Men who just don't have whatever it takes to protect themselves and their family. It's foreign to me. I mean, if we're invaded here at our farm, I got to tell you, there's going to be lead flying. There's no question about it. We're going to do everything we can to stop the invasion. Absolutely. And whatever kind of invasion, whether it be an air invasion, a land invasion, whatever it is, I'm not going to just... There's no white flag at our house. There's no white flag. Dr. Shealy, during the couple minutes before this broadcast started, I was talking with Alex, and I said, "So, Alex, do you have any medical questions that you'd like the answers from Dr. Shealy?" And he came up with a question. He said, "I've got to do something about my brittle nails." He said he wanted to take calcium, and I thought, you know what? We need to talk to Dr. Shealy about this. Brittle nails, Dr. Shealy. Is it more than just calcium?
Calcium won't do anything for his nails. What he needs is gelatin.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the nails are like the toenails and the fingernails are like the hooves, if you will, on cattle and horses. They're made of gelatin, essentially. I personally into a gelatin. I just mix it into a slush, and it's a particular combination of amino acids that you can get best out of plain old beef gelatin.
So, class, what we're talking about is JELLO. No.
We're not talking about JELLO. That's got sugar in it.
Well, if you could have it without that, that's what you're talking about. Well,
right.
Without an artificial sweetener. But that kind of gelatin. My mom used to buy a product called Knox Gelatin, KNOX, I believe. Yes.
It's good. It's a bit more expensive, I think, than plain beef gelatin, but it's good. Yes, plain.
Mm-hmm. And she would just mix it with water and drink it.
Yes, that's exactly what I do.
Okay. And then the question is, some people for their joints take a tablet called glucosamine and chondroitin. But what I've learned over the years is that's okay. But if you combine it with gelatin, now you've really got something that really works. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So if you're going to take glucosamine and chondroitin, class, consider adding to that gelatin. And there you go. Now you've got a working formula to rebuild cartilage. So a lot of us have cartilage that's, got some miles on it. Okay. So, Alex, to answer your question, there you go. Gelatin. And the problem with the JELLO, the stuff that the disgraced alleged actor Bill Cosby used to be the spokesperson for, the problem with that is if you have the the artificially sweetened one, it's got artificial sweeteners in it. If you take the regular one, it's got sugar and colors in it. Class, Dr. Norman Shealy is with us. Dr. Shealy, for those who would like to get in touch with you at your Springfield, Missouri clinic, how can they call you? What number would you like them to dial?
417-351-5221.
Class, that's 417-351-5221. During normal business hours would be the time to call.
Yeah, 8
and
to 5.
If you'd like to, 8 to 5 Central Time. And if you'd like to send Dr. Shealy an email, you can send that to norm@normshealy.com. Norm@normshealy, SHEALY.com. Dr. Shealy, automobile engines, gasoline-powered engines and light truck engines and lawn mowers and weed whackers and so forth that use gasoline, like the ratio of 14.7 pounds of air to 1 pound of gasoline. And that's because that air would have the right amount of oxygen for almost complete combustion or near complete combustion. As I researched this many years ago when I was a very young child, my understanding that atmospheric air is about 78% nitrogen. So the vast majority of the content of our air is nitrogen. 21% is oxygen. And then the rest is other gases. And according to my latest research, that has not changed. And I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that my research is accurate. I don't believe what I've read on the internet is true. I literally believe that the percentage of oxygen in our atmosphere is less than it was when I was a child. I believe that. And what we're finding out, and this is, I guess, I don't have a way of measuring it myself, but I believe with all of the gasoline-powered vehicles that we have consuming oxygen and all the fuel that we're burning, all the oil burners, all the gasoline heating systems, all the cars, trucks, airplanes, jets, all rockets, all these things that we use to burn oxygen are depleting oxygen in our environment. And I was reading an article that says, and this is dailymail.co.uk, surging levels of greenhouse gases are making people tired and stupid, scientists claim. Higher carbon dioxide in poorly ventilated places can make workers feel tired and slow. Well, that's obviously true. Entire population could experience tiredness caused by burning of fossil fuels. I believe that's true. And a huge surge in levels of carbon dioxide in the air could affect memory and concentration. I believe that's true. And you and Dr. Shealy, you and I have been talking about this probably as long as we've been on the air, that people are getting more tired for lots of reasons. They are getting more stupid for lots of reasons. They're unable to concentrate, and they're unable to be as productive as they could be. Do you agree that this is probably true?
I think so. And interestingly, according to one article that I just found, we are 1.7% less. We have 1.7% less oxygen now than hundreds of years ago, at least.
Okay, that's exactly what I'm talking about. That's a significant change, and I have a feeling that could alter genetics going forward. I think that we're going to need bigger lungs in order to extract the amount of oxygen. Bigger lungs as a percentage of what our lungs would normally be, in my opinion, based on we'll call it microevolution. Okay. Well, they're talking about sick buildings, Dr. Shealy, and we've heard that term for, since the 70s and 80s. Sick buildings. And that's what we're doing with schools. Instead of having windows that open, we're building new schools with windows that don't open. Heck, we don't need to worry about opening windows for fresh air. We'll just recycle that tired, used air over and over and over and over and over again. Well, that's normshealy.com. So, class, we've been talking about the depletion of oxygen in our atmosphere. There's no question in my mind. I didn't have the proof, but Dr. Shealy found it. It's 1.7% less than it was before we were born. And I don't know the exact date that the first measurement was taken, but it certainly is less. And we've done it. We have done this. Okay? We've contributed to it. I don't care what anyone says. There's no question in my mind that burning gasoline-powered vehicles, diesel-powered vehicles, tractors, trucks, airplanes, oil burners, gas heaters, gas and coal-powered electric generation plants, all that has decreased the amount of oxygen. There's no question in my mind.
And the carbon dioxide has gone up by 1/3.
Okay, so it's a double whammy. So when you're at your desk and 3 o'clock hits and you go, and you wind down and you can't remember why you're there at your desk, at your job, part of the reason is probably because of the oxygen depletion in the atmosphere and the sick buildings. And what we've determined, believe it or not, we are our own worst enemy, class. What we've determined is, heck, we don't need to heat the outside air and let outside fresh air come into our buildings, because, heck, we'd have to heat that or we'd have to cool that. So let's just keep recirculating the same air over and over and over. So the students are having a great difficulty learning because they need oxygen for their brains to work properly. But there is less of it all the time. So, Dr. Shealy, what in the heck do we do? I'll tell you what we do at our house. No kidding, class. We open the windows, even in the winter. We air out the house. We open the doors, 2 opposing doors, and we let the air race through the house, often to replenish the air coming in our house, so we don't kill ourselves and become stupid and become vegetables and become like the GDP, the generally dumb public. Dr. Shealy, what do you recommend that we do, all of us?
Well, I agree with you. I don't do that, but we have a dog door that is, it has a flap over it, but there's air coming in all the time through the dog door. And so I figure that we actually, when the wind blows, it really comes in through that. And so I figure that plus my own going and coming in and out the door probably does the same kind of thing.
Okay, and we've made windows that are tighter, so there's less air leakage around these. Our new windows compared to windows from the Victorian era and even the 40s, 50s, 60s. So the new windows leak less, but by leaking less, you have less fresh air in your house. Mark in Illinois, welcome. You're on with Dr. Norm Shealy.
Good morning. I got two questions. The first one is that, Dr. Shealy, if a person uses 35% grade hydrogen peroxide to boost their oxygen level in their blood, when should they take it? Like, should they take it early in the morning and not eat any food for like 3 hours, or how, because you don't want to create free radicals in your body? I mean, what are the protocols about if you want to take 35% food grade hydrogen peroxide to boost your oxygen levels?
Well, I have to say I personally don't do that because I know what hydrogen peroxide does when you pour it on a wound, and I don't like that idea in my intestine, in my stomach. So I have never accepted giving it IV, which some people claim they do, or drinking it, because I would prefer just to breathe well and do exercise. Sorry to disappoint you, but
no.
I've got Mark, hold that thought for just a second. What Dr. Shealy's talking about, I believe, is when you pour hydrogen peroxide on a wound, it seems to effervesce. It bubbles. Okay?
Yeah.
And I believe it destroys the living tissue, doesn't it, Dr. Shealy?
Yes. So I think it's bad science to put it in your stomach.
Oh, the other question I had was, how about like one of these ionic filters that pull the negative ions that charge the air and pull out all this dust and stuff like that? And they usually collect it on a plate, like in the middle. It's not a filter, but it's actually like a metal plate. Are those good to use?
Well, again, I don't answer that because I don't know. I'm not bright enough to understand that technology, or haven't looked into it enough, so I try not ever to answer a question just because it's there, but I have not looked up the science in that one.
Mark, I've got a comment. I've got a comment on that. Have you yourself experienced using one of those?
Yeah, I actually have an ozone machine, but you can't be in the room with that when you run it. And you want to have ventilation. You probably want to have a fan going. Or if it's in the summertime, you may have the window cracked or something like that, even in the wintertime. But you have to leave the premises for probably, even if you use it for a half hour, you have to be out of the premises for at least, nobody can be in the house, no animals, no humans, for at least 2 hours. But I've used one of those ionic breezes before years ago, and they really cut down on the dust particles in all of the, and I was kind of wondering too, being that they got a collection plate, with all this dust, just smart dust and stuff like that that's in the air, I wonder if it would actually collect that on the plate as well.
Yeah, well, here's my experience. I have used an ion generator for probably 30 years, maybe more, continuously. Except when we'd move, we'd take it from, one house to the next, and so forth. But when we're there, it's running. And here's my experience. I have one that looks like a cylinder. It's probably about a foot tall, probably about 3 inches in diameter. It uses very little electricity and has a fuzzy top. And it looks like steel wool, except it's brass. And what this thing does is it generates negative ions and puts them in the air. And if you were to put your nose up to, within a half an inch of this fuzzy brass wool where the negative ions come out, it smells like ozone, smells like it had just rained. It smells like clean air. And here's what happens. The ions come out, and they attach themselves to dust. And the dust becomes heavier, and it falls down fast. And I tease my wife, Mrs. Finelli, all the time, like we need to get out the rake and dust the house. Because, and I've been saying that for 30 years. You know, I'm looking for the rake so I can help you dust. And that's what happens, Mark. And so my question for you is, have you seen that? So instead of the dust being as airborne, if you will, it falls down way faster. So it really looks like you're a terrible housekeeper because all the flat surfaces get dust on them. Have you experienced that?
Oh, yeah. Even with the ozone machine. What's the one that you have? What's the name of the unit that you have?
Well, it's in another room. I'm in the studio now. They don't like dead air. So if I were to walk away, but I'll tell you what.
Hey, well, how about
during the break? I will look it up. During the break, I'll look it up.
Do you think that these negative ion machines would actually also collect all this stuff that's in the coming out of the atmosphere? I mean, would it? Whatever chemtrails and stuff like that. You think would collect that on the collector plate as well?
Mark, I've got to tell you, I believe the answer is yes. And here's my thought on it. Although it appears that our house is dustier than the average house or the typical house, our dust, there's less dust in the air because it's fallen down. Now, I have in the studio right next to me, I have a microphone mixer. It's made by a company called Mackie, M-A-C-K-I-E. And that darn thing is a dust magnet because there's electronics in there. And in the other room, in the kitchen, is the ion generator. And I believe what happens is that the electronics attract even more the heavy dust particles that have been ionized by the ion generator. So I have to keep cleaning this mixer off all the time because it looks like it attracts dust, and it does. So my thoughts are I would rather walk on the dust than breathe the dust.
Yeah.
That's my thought process.
Going back to the hydrogen peroxide, Dr. Shealy, there's a book called 1 Minute Miracle, and if you want to get that book, you can maybe you could want to research that and see what you think about hydrogen peroxide.
Well, I've done my own research, and there is no circumstance where anybody convinced me to drink it. So,
okay,
I think it is just dangerous.
Okay.
I've seen people drink hydrogen peroxide, and I was quite astonished. I thought it was of concern. So I don't know about the science behind it, but I do know that it kills bacteria, and I think it kills almost everything that's alive, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, yeah, you have to mix it so many particles per million, but between you start out with a small dosage and then you build it up is what I've read and stuff like that. But yeah, it will kill all the bacteria. But something else too about killing bacteria is that I had an old U.S. Army manual and I still got it, but it talks about it mentioned if there was a nuclear war, it said the best thing to do is use baking soda to scrub your body down with, and it would remove the radiation. What do you know about that?
I have not read that. Dr. Shealy, do you have any thoughts on that?
Nope. Sorry.
Okay, so Mark,
well, you might want to look on that one. I don't know. That's what I. It's an Army manual. It was from World War II when they tested the nuclear warheads. They named the warheads in Nevada. They recommended it, and that all their people washed down with baking soda.
It makes a lot of sense because baking soda does absorb odors. Class, Mark asked what kind of ionizer we have here at our house. And during the break, I ran into the kitchen and took a look at it. It's made by a company called Energ Air, E-N-E-R-G-A-I-R-E. E-N-E-R-G-A-I-R-E. One word. And it's been around for a long time, at least 30 years that I know of. And I think I paid $8 or $10 for it used at a flea market a long time ago, and it's been running ever since. There are no moving parts, none. The current price of a new one is $69.95, which seems like a lot of money to me. Maybe you can find one. It's, let's say, 12 inches tall. It's flat on the bottom. It has a red LED. It's black plastic, and it has a baloney-shaped top. So it's cut on a diagonal, and that's where the ions are emitted from, that baloney-shaped top. So you might be able to find one used. I would not spend $70 for it. I would not. There are a whole bunch of other companies' products that are being offered used on eBay in the less than $20 neighborhood shipped. And I have a feeling they would probably work as well in terms of generating a small amount of negative ions. So that's what I have here. Dr. Shealy, you sent out a notification called Trusting My Intuition, December 1, 2018. Would you like to share with us what you meant?
Well, it was looking at some of the challenges when one lives by intuition. I was quoting sometimes when I got into trouble in medical school for making a diagnosis I wasn't supposed to be able to make and was criticized for it, and yet I was right. So, intuition is, to me, has created, I've got 15 patents that came to me as a result of intuitive insights. So I do trust my intuition more than other people trust it sometimes.
And when you talk about intuition, we're talking about what we call gut feelings, right? What does your gut tell you? Isn't that what you're saying?
Well, of course, it's the same. That's exactly it. And to some extent, a lot of creativity is that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, whether it's poetry or music or whatever, and science, in my opinion, is largely the result of good intuition.
Okay. Well, Dr. Shealy, I have been reading an article that is on Bloomberg, Bloomberg Quint, or Quint, QUINT.com. And let me see, BLOOMBERGQUINT.com. And it is now saying what you and I have been talking about for years. Here it is, December 9, 2018. Smartphones, tablets, and video games are physically challenging the brains of adolescents. Early results from a $300 million study funded by the National Institute of Health have shown, according to a report by 60 Minutes, that the onslaught of these screens, these blue screens, has been transformative for young people, and not for the better, generally. So it shows that usage of more than 7 hours, for more than 7 hours daily, results in the premature thinning of the brain cortex, the outermost layer that processes information from the physical world. So what we're finding is that children are getting brain damaged by the early use of screens in their lives. They are having lower thinking and language test scores as a result of using screens for more time. Any quick comments, Dr.
That's called early Alzheimer's.
Get yours today. All you have to do is, class, make sure you buy Christmas presents with lots of screens and get those young children started early in their demise so they will turn into vegetables. And you can make it happen to a family member near you.